Hello YouTube family, James Green, short series Shenanigans. So today's going to be episode number 3 in regards to the Dumore tool post grinder rebuild. Okay, there are going to be more episodes, but it's going to be a while. I don't know when, because we do have to build pulleys for it. So to kind of recap and bring everybody up to speed, so I didn't show it because it was just a very common, quick, simple. So we did put the bearings in, and because I did have questions, the armature in here, or correction, the windings that are in the case, they actually slide out. I've had people say you don't need to pull them out, and actually they do slide out. They weren't affixed in like in most cases. This end cap come off, and there's actually 2 more bolts, and they slide right out. The reason I slid them out was because there was connectors in here where the brushes slid in that needed to be repaired, as well as on the windings themselves. Now I talked about using the glue, or not glue, but the liquid electrical tape. And the reason I slid those windings out is because the insulation on the little leads that came off was bad. It was dry, it was hard, so that was why I slid the windings out. Okay, I couldn't get back up in there with it, so this stuff is great. You let it set overnight. Okay, you can pick this up. I talked about it before. It comes in obviously black, red, green, and white. So places where I've talked about this before, when I did my surface grinder, some components at the wires, the insulation was cracked. You don't have room to get in there and wrap it, and plus electrical tape will kind of come off this. You paint it on, let it set for 24 hours, you're good to go, and we did that. So it's got new bearings. It works great. We got some new felt material and put in there, and of course, you know, you're supposed to have a pulley that fits on here. It runs great. It runs phenomenal. I did reinforce and put a grommet in here, and I built the wire up purposely and made this stiff. Okay, and added, there was heat shrink that I put in there, so that because of where this goes through in the case, other than just a grommet, so that way it gives it some rigidity. So anytime you fold, which this will be stored like this because I don't have a box for this thing, and I've got other parts. I've got the main bracket to it here that I'm working on cleaning up. You know, I've got the adjustment piece out here, and I'm cleaning it up. But so this is a big 1/2 horsepower size. What I talked about was in the video, and this is kind of what I want to talk about today, the spindle bearings for these. Now I called and spoke with the people at Dumore. Okay, just any old bearing, even though it's the right dimensions, will not be the correct one. Talked about it before on the covering on there, because potentially, depending on the pulley sizes you have in combination, you can end up 42,500 RPM at the spindle down there. Okay, it says so right on the cover. So I learned something new in this whole process. It was a lot about bearings, and I want to talk to you about that today. They're ABEC rated bearings. So I printed some stuff off. You guys can look this up on Wikipedia. I mean, because I was talking to the gentleman at Dumore, he's like, because that spindle does require 4 bearings, and I can get them at vxb.com. It's where I like to get my bearings. They are available, but they're $101 a piece. And there are other bearings that are the same dimensions, but they're not rated for that. So what I've learned about, because I got the ABEC scale in here, and this is all based off of, let me open it up here, the American Bearing Manufacturers Association. I'll just read real quick so you guys understand. It was established in 1970, and it says the American Bearing Manufacturers Association is an industry group that deals with all aspects of bearing technology. It was founded in 1917 as an informal group of manufacturers with the purpose of aiding bearing manufacturing worldwide during World War I. 1933 saw saw the ratification of Articles of Incorporation by the then current members of the Anti-Friction Bearing Manufacturers Association. In 1934, the AFBMA was incorporated as an organization in New York City. In 1993, the organization formally changed its title to the American Bearing Manufacturers Association in order to better serve its members and expand membership eligibility. Now there's a whole lot more on there, and I'm not going to bore you with it. You can go onto Wikipedia and see it yourself. But I did print something out and learn something. So ABEC rated. Basically what they talk about is a general purpose, and I'm going to simplify this really simple. A general purpose bearing, and I use this as an example, the little windmills that sit in your yard and it turns, you don't need a precision bearing. It's a general purpose roller bearing, okay? And it's just roller as, okay? Anything that turns less than 25,000 RPM is considered a general purpose roller bearing, okay? And that's where the ABEC ratings start in. ABEC stands for the Annular Bearing Engineering Committee. And I'll just read a little excerpt here real quick. The ABEC scale is an industry accepted standard for the tolerances of a ball bearing. It was developed by the Annular Bearing Engineering Committee of the American Bearing Manufacturers Association, or ABMA, of precision bearings in a specified class. Manufacturers who produce equipment that require bearings must also know the dimensional tolerances to design parts that will accommodate a bearing. There are 7 bearing classes from largest to smallest tolerances, which means from loosest to tightest, okay? They go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. The higher the ABEC classes provide better precision, efficiency, and the possibility of greater speed capabilities, but do not necessarily allow the component to spin faster. The ABEC rating does not specify many critical factors such as load handling capabilities, ball precision, materials, Rockwell hardness, degree of ball bearing and raceway, polishing, noise, vibration, and lubrication. Due to these factors, an ABEC 3 classified bearing could perform better than an ABEC 7 bearing. Bearings not conforming to at least ABEC 1 cannot be classified as a precision bearing as their tolerances are too loose. That was the key thing that I learned in here, the takeaway from this, and that's why I'm telling you guys about it. So, and they've got a little list on here. This is, you guys can see. So ABEC 1 is if it's turning less than 25,000 RPM. Generally the start point is greater than 17 to 25 is what I've been able to extrapolate from a lot of stuff on here. As far as RPM rating, class 3 is 32,500, class 5 is 37,000 RPM, and class 4, which is ABEC 7, 43,000 RPM. Those are the bearings that are required to be in that spindle, because depending on your combination that you end up with, that bearing can spin that fast. So if you put a bearing that is a non-ABEC rated, a general purpose, it will not handle it, because the angular contact is a 15-degree contact, and it goes into, you guys can pull it up on Wikipedia. I learned a lot. I'm not going to bore you with a lot more details. As far as, there's a lot of information out there. So the people at Dumore said, yes, we can get them, but you know, there's other places out there. From them, they were very expensive. The least in any, the exact same bearing that meets the tolerances, he even gave me the part number, they're about $101 a piece. It takes 4 of them, so I am gonna get the bearings, but I'm gonna get them over time. I've still got pulleys to make, so this will be just episode number 3 for a while on that. I learned a lot from it, guys. I learned a lot about ABEC. And also when I got to looking into it on YouTube, I didn't realize that skateboarders are really into ABEC rated bearings and how fast can they make their skateboard and everything go. So I learned a lot from that. That was a big takeaway. I didn't realize, you know, and depending on your application, that's the 2 things I took away from all this was, number 1, what's your application? What are they going in? Are they going in a windmill that's going to set in a yard? And if so, a general purpose, you know, $3 bearing will be fine. If it's going in something like a spindle on one of these, now the spindle on this tool post grinder, because it's the larger half horse, the bearings are larger. I've got one of the smaller 44 ones, and it's got bearings in it, but they're not the correct ones. Well, I spoke with the people at Dumore. They're like, yeah, those require a precision bearing. They're not as big as these, and someone had put just a general purpose. That's why they're out. So if you guys looking at buying a tool post grinder, my personal opinion, the takeaway would be, other than the bearings for the motor, because those originally had felt seal. I replaced them because they were bad. I replaced both of them with they were neoprene sealed, and they were, you know, I think I got a pair of them for less than $20 shipped. They weren't here local, but that's fine. They're actually a common agricultural bearing. Sorry. But the bearings inside the spindles, literally that's what I would think you're buying when you look at this. If you can get if there's any type of grinding, crunchy, rough noise in the spindle, that's where your money's going to be. So if, you know, someone's selling these things for $300-400, oh, it just needs a cord. Well, if you can ask them to spin, you know, that's where you're going to spend your money, especially if it's one of these big half horsepower. You know, my spindle takes 4 bearings that goes in there, and so literally that's $400. But again, when I got this, I knew it needed work. It was a project. Full disclosure, I knew this thing needed work. I just didn't know that the spindle bearings, I learned a lot, and that's why I do the videos, guys. So if you have one or you've purchased one, you go back out there and spin it and realize, and you just go to the, you know, bearing house and you just get a, you know, a $3 bearing and put in there. It's not going to handle the high speeds. I've had a lot of comments from people that, no, you'll be just fine, and it's like, you know what, well, when I go to do this, and I don't use it all day every day, because these things, they still build this model new from Dumore, and they're $9,000+. Now if I was running a business, that'd be different. I go buy a new one. But the Garage Guy Weekend Warrior, you want to invest in one of these, my opinion is you're literally buying the spindle bearings, the condition of them, and the motor, obviously. The motors are inexpensive to put bearings in, but that spindle now, depending on the size, but, you know, I will just say buyer beware, you know, just like anything else. But I did learn a lot. There's a lot of information out there. When I do, I've got to get the dimensions for the bearing, or not the bearing, the pulleys. I'm going to get the stuff together. I'm going to build the pulleys for this. That's also going to, because they have to be somewhat domed, and I'm going to do that. I'll use my radius tool, and we'll create a radius on them. That'll all be on camera, and that'll be later on down the road. I don't know when, but we just kind of wanted to call this episode 3 or a wrap up. And also on the horizon, to kind of change gears, excuse me, a little bit, we have, and I'll slide you up here, or I'll scoot the camera up right here. All right, so recently picked this up online. Individual said it needed a cord. Didn't know if it ran. I got it. The motor doesn't work, so we're going to source one of these little motors. As a matter of fact, I've got the whole bottom piece off here already, soaking in a bucket of Purple Power. And you guys saw I had done the chuck on this thing. I showed it on social media. This is actually a do-all piece of equipment. Okay, it's a spinning index fixture. This is going to get taken apart and cleaned. Everything moves freely. It's nice and stiff. I'm going to do this just like I did that tool post grinder over time. Right now I'm doing the degreasing phase. It's a rotary grinder fixture. This has the spindle that fits on the outside because it had a 4-jaw scroll chuck. I'm not sure. It feels like it's got, you could put in here a drawbar I've seen on some of them, but these are little rotary grinders. They work in conjunction with your surface grinder. And like I said, the whole other plate for the tool post that fits here is off and it's soaking. And so we're going to get a little motor, which is good. It's a Dayton motor. Not sure if that's the original motor or someone's replaced it, but so there's a project coming up that's going to be pretty cool, and that'll go along with my surface grinding equipment. So, you know, let's say you wanted to grind something like this and it was a really hardened material. and you set your, because it's got the chuck and your tail stock, and then you can, you know, your surface grinder wheel comes in here and you move it along. Use your imagination. Lots of applications, so I'm excited. That's going to be, I'm not going to show the using the the degreasing stuff, and I've talked about this before and I've had a lot of people. The way I found out that works good for the evapo rust, degrease first with Purple Power or whatever degreaser you got. Matter of fact, I get it in the big jugs like this. That's concentrate. Depending on where you're at in the world, that stuff works really well, and it will pull the grease off your hands. You can put it in a bucket, add water, submerge it, come out, and just use and scrub it clean. Get all of the grease off first. What I found for best results are using degrease it first, get all the grease off, and then you want to pull the rust. Putting certain items in evapo rust, what I have learned and found out, put it in a container, submerge it, put a lid on it, let it set for at least 24 hours. If you put several pieces of material in, sometimes people say, oh, they turn out black. Well, what that is, that's kind of a galvanic reaction, or it's kind of like cold bluing, literally. So, which is a good thing. You've pulled the rust off, and it's put a black. And I've seen it done to several, which is fine. I cleaned up a bunch of cutters for Keith Rucker last year after the summer bash, and it cleaned a bunch of them. It turned them dark, which is good because that's like cold bluing. You don't want them to rust. Keith is down there in Tifton, Georgia, and so that really came in handy. So if you do have certain items they turn dark, that's a good thing, because it's, depending on where you're at, if it's really humid, things rust right away. Essentially it rust blued it for you, which is, it's good. So and when you pull the items out, what I found to get everything clean, really hot water and a scrub brush, clean it all off. Now, depending on where you're at and the temperature and everything, things might try to flash rust. Just come back real quick with some WD-40 and you'll be good to go. Now, if you're going to paint it, don't put any WD-40. Go ahead. What I've done in the past to help, and because I'm going to paint items right after, is just have your paint stuff ready, so as soon as you pull it out and you dry it off and you heat it up, because I'll take a heat gun and heat it to boil all the moisture out of the pores. I'll take a heat gun and heat it up, let it cool back down to room temperature, and then I'll paint it with whatever coating, you know, whether I'm doing Duracoat or just I'm spray painting or whatever like that, and that's the best results I've had. You can do a lot of parts, and even though it'll look black and murky, in 1 gallon I did 243 pieces. Yes, 243 pieces, from big slab mills to shell mills to gear cutters, on 1 gallon, and that lasted about 2.5 weeks, and that was a lot of trips of stuff. So it worked great. You know, depending on where you're, you know, some people like to use the electrolysis method. In my opinion, I've done it before. It doesn't get it clean enough for me. But again, depending on your application and where you're at, it might work great for you. I like it because, especially on stuff like this, some of these parts are going to be getting derusted, and they're going to be, you know, degreased, derusted, cleaned up, and there's a lot of high-end tool steels and stuff involved in here. So, you know, we do want to make sure that we don't eat away any materials. And another takeaway that I've found, and I've talked about it a lot, for removing grease off items, or you have oils from machining, what I do, I'll get a bottle like this, denatured alcohol. Because on your machine doing cleanup, like when I get done doing like a lot of brass or cast iron, you want to clean it down instead of using carb cleaner, brake cleaner, because literally this is like using, you can get this a gallon for like $9 or whatever, and it won't pull the paint off your material. It's like using hand sanitizer. Make sure you're well ventilated, and it works great. You know, when you get done machining parts and you want to rinse off that flood coolant, the oil, that Monroe Astro grind that I use, it works great. So thank you again. I know this was a lot of talking, and there was a lot of information I wanted to put out there, because I know in the last 2 episodes, the reason I'm doing these 3 is because if you guys are looking to buy one, or you have one and you purchased it and you really haven't tried it out, or it's sat on the shelf for a while, or maybe you've just purchased one and you want to go through and it needs some TLC, you have any questions, my public email address, eagledustoff37@gmail.com. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter at eagledustoff37. Click the like button down at the bottom, you guys. Constructive comments. If you guys have any questions, you want to know more, like I said, you can put in your information and ABEC, A-B-E-C scale. You can put that in and into Google, and it'll bring up Wikipedia stuff. And you know, it takes you to link after link after link, and it explains further about tolerances. Now, the step above ABEC is an air bearing. So, you know, I learned a lot. That's why I want to do the video. So you guys have a lot of good, useful information out there when you go to tackle one of these projects or in the future. So what I learned, and I'm really excited about this, the takeaway for me now is when I go to do something is, what is the application of the bearing? Meaning, is it going to be spinning in a yard, on a windmill? Is it a piece of equipment? What kind of load? Because even going on VXB's site, they talk about certain bearings might be that, but some are a little bit more because they're designed to handle, let's say, a lot of side load depending on the application that it's going to be in. So I learned a lot more than just, okay, ID, OD, and width, and we're good to go. So application and how fast is it turning? That can determine a lot on your bearing, whether it's going to be correct or not, because you could have two bearings side by side and internal differences. You know, this one might be $2 and this one might be $20, but depending on what you're going to do, you know, if you're doing a spindle on a tool post grinder, you know, you're going to need the better quality precision 15-degree angular contact bearing. That's per Dumore. Talk to them, wonderful people. So again, you guys, there was a lot of information I wanted to put out. We're going to be changing gears. We're going to be working on, and it's already set up on the mill here. I'm going to be working on, and I've already done a little bit, and I'm going to be doing some Facebook Live stuff. I know this video is going to be on YouTube for a long time, but you know, I'll do some live sessions, sewing some general mill work. I'm going to be doing some machining and making two strike faces. They're going to be welded together for an anvil project, because I'm building a homemade anvil, homemade furnace, gas furnace, gas forge, and a lot of things. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it, guys and gals. Really excited about the new year, and so there we go. Thanks for watching, you guys. If you have any questions, again, my public email address, eagledustoff37@gmail.com. Take care of yourself and take care of your family, because remember, at the end of the day, you and your family is all you got, and I truly mean it. If you guys have any questions, comment below. Thanks for watching. Get out in the garage, or heck, you know what? Get on the internet and read up on ABEC rated bearings. This stuff is fun. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.